Díodí gach duine. Hello everyone and welcome to Lockdown. My name is Emma Allsopp and today we're very much looking to the future in terms of what should we do if there was to be another lockdown? What more can the NI executive do to tackle the issues that we have been facing? And will the normal that we were accustomed to pre-COVID ever return? Today I will be asking our three guests, Beth from Rathmore, Erin from Methodist College Belfast and Stephen from Sperrin Integrated College to imagine themselves as future members of the NI executive and what they would do should another pandemic hit. So, how do each of you think the executive has acted thus far in terms of tackling the pandemic? So, Erin, we'll go to you first.
I definitely think that there was more that they could have done at the start to try and prevent it a little bit more. I think having that little break at Christmas wasn't the best idea because there was a spike like straight afterwards. I know that Christmas is hard for people and they want to be around family and stuff, but it's more important that we keep more people safe.
And Stephen, what are your thoughts?
I understand that this is like a really difficult situation to be put into. Like it's very stressful. There's so many new things, so many people that you have to look after. But I feel like our government was so keen on following England and following different people than sticking with our own actions and looking at our own situation.
Yes, no, definitely. I would completely agree with that. And Beth, what are your thoughts?
I think it's hard to judge because this is such a new situation, something we haven't really seen before, like tests being cancelled. But one thing I think everyone would agree with to an extent is that we were expecting more confident and more informed restrictions, so we knew what to do and what not to do earlier on to cause less stress and less panic.
If you were a member of the executive, what would you have done differently? So Stephen, we'll come to you.
I feel like now, if I was the executive, I'd make a mandate where all masks have to be required in public spaces and enclosed places and stuff. And like failure to do so would result in a fine, because I feel like a lot of people don't really take it seriously, and like this is such a small thing that can make such a big difference for everybody else.
And Erin?
We should check like where people are, if you know what I mean. My year in Methody got sent home like 3 weeks early, and it was because someone had a party and when they shouldn't have, and then we all had to pay the price for it. Like I know almost everyone in all three of my classes had COVID. Almost all of my friends had it. I was really lucky that I didn't get it, so I think I escaped. But like making sure that children aren't in a massive group at the weekends, and just trying to keep it to a minimum so that we can keep people safe.
So Erin, you mentioned there about young people having parties and meeting up at massive groups the weekends. Obviously with the current lockdown we've had and are currently having, that obviously shouldn't be allowed, but inevitably it's happening. So if you were a member of the executive, how would you tackle that, Stephen?
I always hear the argument that people go out and people go to different places because nobody they know has got COVID and they've never got COVID, and it's always a thing that people hear. If I was the executive, I'd enforce such more stricter lockdown rules, and it sounds stupid, but more police around, making sure that breaking up crowds, more fines. It's unfair, but if people aren't going to take it seriously, it's the extent that we'll have to go to.
Yeah.
Although it may be difficult for police to be patrolling everywhere, making sure that everyone is in their house, but as long as you had a general, a policing area, then I definitely think that the amount of parties and the amount of young people, gathering in groups, it's not only young people. I know adults who who go and walk in big massive groups, or who go to their friends' gardens to drink, you know what I mean? So it's not just us who are the problem, it's everyone.
When discussing it in my class, a lot of people were bringing up conspiracy theories, and I think more should be done to discourage that, because in the end, all it does is spread more fear, more panic, and people are taking it less seriously than they should. I think that's an area that needs more addressing.
Yeah. So Beth, if I just say with you here, obviously in terms of vaccine rollout, the government have prioritised senior citizens and those of an upper age limit. Do you think this was the right way to go about it in terms of vaccinating them first?
I think while it is very important to address those who are more vulnerable to COVID-19 because of their decreasing immune system, one thing because with my class that came up was what should also be a priority is those whose jobs involve a lot of contact, people who are working in facilities where they come to kind of with a lot of people in one shift or one day, because they are at higher risk because of the multiple people they will be coming into contact with.
So, Stephen, if I come to you, do you think, obviously, under current regulations, teachers are not up there in terms of priority of getting the vaccine? Do you think this should be changed as they are constantly working with kids on a daily basis?
I don't think that teachers should necessarily be put higher than like key workers, care workers, older people. But I definitely do think that they should see some prioritization, especially older teachers. Like my sister works with people who are 60 above, 50 above, and there's probably a new COVID case in her school every couple of days where multiple classes have to go home because they've caught COVID. So I definitely do think that there should be some prioritization when it comes to teachers and teacher assistants.
So a question I would like to ask each of you again is, if you were a member of the executive, what do you think the best way is to teach students during a global pandemic? So Stephen.
I feel bad for teachers because it is a really difficult situation. I have teachers now, even when I'm in isolation, dropping things through my door, just like keep me up with work and to make sure that I'm like focused on everything. So I do appreciate it a lot. And like, it is a really difficult situation for everyone, teachers and students. If I was the executive, I'd have no idea because it's a strange situation. It's a difficult time. I would just like keep advising everybody to like power through, because the longer we do it, the easier it'll get.
Yeah, and Beth, what would your alternative scenario be to online learning?
So online learning, I think something that my school had planned for, at least my politics class had planned for, was blended learning, where in which half the class or half the year will be in 1 week and the rest would learn online with a blended learning booklet, so they knew what they would do each day. And that would hopefully get us both more used to online learning in case it ever came to a point where that would be the only thing we would have to do. And it would allow for less cases because there would be less people, crowding up corridors and in the classroom.
And Erin, what are your thoughts?
I think that it's more beneficial if schools prioritize the senior section of school, because ultimately, like, we are the ones who aren't being able to do A-levels, who might not get into university just because of a predicted grade, which doesn't show how well we actually would have performed, if it had been a normal year. So I think we're not really benefiting from being sat at home and like being unable to finish A-levels and GCSEs, because in first year, don't get me wrong, it's hard, but it's not as hard as what senior school is.
Beth, if you were the education minister, would you want to give more clarity to pupils and their parents in terms of when they'll be attending and what exams they'll be doing? I mean, there's still sort of a lack of clarity there. So how would you tackle that if you were the education minister?
Yeah, definitely 100%. I think it is so important because, like, lower 1% are stressed enough as it is with their A levels, as are GCSE students, and even those who are choosing their GCSEs, and having the stress of not knowing how am I going to be graded? Am I going to go through a test? Will that test count? Will that essay count? Am I going to feel because I failed that test? That adds a lot of stress and a lot of unnecessary stress. But it is very difficult considering, how to go about the test because obviously each subject is different. Like I had three tests this week because I'm doing 3 subjects. I have a cousin who's doing 9 and he's only doing 4 subjects. So it's very difficult, I think, to decide what method will work best. But I definitely think teachers and people who've worked in schools should have major input on that because they know students best and they know how revision works best and they have more experience. I think that applies to all areas really because if the experts aren't being heard, then the result isn't going to be, the best one.
Yeah. Now, one final sort of thing I would like to ask you about is throughout the course of this lockdown series, we have had the majority of girls on speaking about these issues during the pandemic. There's not as many boys. And why, I guess I want to ask, why do you think this is? Why do you think girls are more eager to volunteer for these things than boys? So Stephen, I will come to you first because of course you are a boy. So why do you think there's a lack of males wanting to volunteer and things like this?
I think it's not necessarily a bad thing that there's less boys in politics, especially in this program, because a couple of years ago, girls weren't involved in politics at all. Girls were shunned for trying to voice their opinions. So now that they have the ability and the freedom to be able to do it, I think that we should praise them and be able to get their voice out there instead of trying to bring more boys into it when girls have finally found their platform to be able to speak on what they want.
And Beth, what would your thoughts be on this? Why less boys have participated in this programme series?
I think while there are many boys who are extremely passionate about politics and are always trying to learn more about it and are just very involved in it, I think for the longest time there was a stigma around girls getting involved in politics. And now that that's kind of breaking down and girls are getting more of a voice, they're almost making up for it in a sense. I think boys, in a sense, kind of know that their opinions will be heard, whereas with girls, for so long, that wasn't the case. That now they are trying to make up for that, and they are trying to get as passionate and as involved as they can.
We're just trying to battle the gender inequality that we've had to face for so long, and it's now is our time to shine, where the young people are finally interested in having a better future for ourselves.
I definitely think that if there's more women, we'll have more. There's going to be more diversity. There's going to be more opinions. There's going to be more educated decisions when it comes to it. I don't want to sound sexist or anything, but I feel like girls definitely do educate themselves more when they're speaking on important topics. I think that it is still important that men stay involved in politics to get that balance that you were talking about, but it's definitely not necessarily a bad thing that girls take more charge in it now.
Yeah.
I think ultimately what we should be aiming for is a balanced response. Because from a bunch of passionate people, no matter your gender, your race, anything like that, I think what we should be aiming for is ultimately balance. But I think now, while we're still fighting back against racism and sexism and whatever else, it is important that the minority is almost louder for a while before we can settle into a good balance.
So if I could just say a massive thank you to our 3 guests today, Beth, Stephen and Erin. You've been a delight, and I think you'd all make a very good executive. I think everyone will agree with me there. For your future politicians, the road ahead is looking bright. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. Gura Mailgit and Lockdown was brought to you by Politics in Action.